Well, it's the last session of the day, but whoever is here, I can promise you, you'll go back with some very interesting learnings and insights today. I have a man with me who's fondly known as Sam Singh. For those of you who haven't interacted with him, and Sam, if I can use that word, is a very interesting person. Uh, I don't know how many of you had the opportunity to know his background, uh, and why when I called Sam, I thought he'll be the perfect person to finish this day. Sam has worked across clients, across agencies, across digital companies in India, outside India, in the US, in Europe, in Asia. I jokingly told him the other day that, out of the 3 domains in the marketing communication space, he has worked in 4. So there are very few people like him. So, thank you, Sam, for, being here and doing this session. I'm sure you have a busy day. Before I, get on to, the sort of conversation, let me just read out the list of companies Sam has worked with, and you can understand the width of all that he's been doing in the last few years. So your last role was with TikTok, based in North America as their head of business. Before that, you used to run Group M in India, based very much here out of Delhi. Before that, you were with Google, first in the US, then in India. Before that, you've done stints with GSK and P&G, two of the world's foremost consumer products companies, where you were very deeply involved in their evolution of media spending. And you also spent time with IPG. I don't know if I've missed any companies, Sam. So I'll start with my first question on your journey and what we've been doing. I know of very few people in the media sector, advertising sector, with such a varied kind of list of companies that you worked with. So tell us, how this journey came about, and especially last 10 years, given how technology has kind of surrounded us from all sides, how this journey has kind of grown.
Well, thanks for those kind words. You covered up all the companies that I've worked with, so there's nothing left from an introduction point of view. Look, I've been truly blessed. It's my wife and I, and not having kids for us has made it easier to move around the world. I spent the longest time, after a very short stint at IPG, which was off campus, spent a really long time in consumer products, across functions and roles. And this was a time when 2005 or so, I was those days actually before I was in Boston in marketing, and we were all seeing digital just galloping. And what became clear to me was then I moved to China with Procter. China to P&G, at least at that point in time, was what India is to Unilever. Exactly the same kind of importance of the market. And in China and Asia, I started seeing digital leaders coming down further. Back at that point in time, made it pretty clear to me if I wanted to have a long and interesting career in marketing and not be consigned to the customs of history, I better jump headfirst into the digital side of the business. Did that GSK as a client, but then got the opportunity to do that at Google. And I was able to see from the other side, so I went from buying to sales. It was a very interesting time at Google. They were transitioning from being a pure performance business dominated by search and then by TV 360. Their double-click based their ad stack buying system. And YouTube had started becoming bigger and bigger. And the role of these so-called upper funnel branding conversations took off. World converges, the amount of point to see now performance going into these traditional so-called branding formats. And then from there it was a hop step to then go back to the agency world, which is where I started. And then back into technology and now into back to media. So it's a very interesting journey, and keeps me getting out of bed at half an hour earlier every morning, and as long as that works, it's great.
Fantastic, yeah, and now running HT Media, which is one of the oldest, most trusted news brands in India, and to kind of reinvent it for the new digital age, I'm sure it's a hell of an exciting job. Let me focus a bit with you on, what's happening with consumers, because eventually for brands in the media and outside the media space, that's the most critical aspect. And you worked with, brands in the consumer space, brands in the media space now with TikTok, with Google. You also looked at, many sectors while being at the agency. And consumer behavior is something that has changed drastically in the last 10 years. Now, being the leader CEO of a large predominantly print company as of today, how do you see that evolution kind of in the next, say, 2-3 years moving forward? And what is the role, what are the few key areas that brands need to focus on across sectors to kind of keep pace with the changing consumer behavior?
It's a fascinating question. You'll be surprised with the contribution of digital to the overall HC group. It's quite significant and growing. Uh, Look, if consumers, and somebody asked me this question when I was joining HC, why are you joining HC? Print, legacy business, what's going on? After working at TikTok, which is at the other end, why this movement? I was on the board of the company for a really long time. I think India is one of those few markets where the print journey, the print conversation, the role of print is yet evolving in a positive manner.
Right.
What I call the functional literacy, the actual ability to read and write as against the census definition. That is still penetrating down the pyramid. Disposable incomes are still rising. And as you go into sometimes outside of the metros into smaller towns in the hinterland, you actually see print doing rather well. There is, I think, another aspect that's happening, and this is a worldwide conversation that's going on, which is across media, which is the role of truth, the role of trustworthiness in conversations. Counterintuitively, it's also the same desire that has led to the growth of podcasts in the US.
That's right.
Long form podcasting, 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, because people are trying to reach out and have fewer interactions with whomsoever they consider trustworthy and interesting, doesn't matter where it comes from. So I think that's something which plays well into the hands of, I would say, content creation ecosystems. I won't say a print company or a digital company. Content creation ecosystems where trust but verify is an inherent credo. And I think events of the last 2 months with all that happened at the border just reinforced the role of content and news which is substantiated as against the most sensational. So I think that is something which continues to rise. The other one which really surprises at times is the role of involvement, immersion, engagement, formats that do that well, formats that have an element of surprise and scale, formats that give you impact, and print and television in their own ways are bouncing back in that. Television, you see that happening in the US a fair bit with new and interesting ways of connecting with OTT and measurement and personalization, those playing out. I think with print you're seeing interesting ones, especially with innovation. Different kinds of inks like photochromatic, hydrophobic, hydroscopic and all that kind of fun stuff.
Fragrance-based. Yeah.
Fragrance-based, there you go. And as long as a medium has the ability to surprise and engage, there is a role for it.
Yeah, I mean, innovation, I think print has really innovated in the last few years, and especially if you look at a country like India, I think it is the only large economy where advertising on print is back to pre-COVID levels in absolute numbers. Of course, the share might be changing because the market is growing, but in absolute numbers, it has not come down. Unlike most of the major economies where the absolute numbers are down, and there's a reason, as you enumerated. Literacy rates are yet to catch up fully. There are still people who are fully hooked onto print, and most importantly, the holy grail that most brands chase, which is trust with consumers. Today, you talk about FMCG companies, you talk about companies in the BFSI space, everybody is talking about trust, how to create trust with consumers. And a lot of legacy media brands, especially in the news space, already have that in their DNA. Right? So it is about how you kind of reinforce that trust and kind of climb the ladder. Having said that, there is another very challenging aspect of growth of digital, which is this new wave of AI generated content.
Yeah.
I was having a chat at lunchtime with somebody, a CEO of an agency who was here. Karthik Sharma actually was here, and he says his client recently presented on a review meeting how one of his marketing team members created a 30-second ad using a AI chatbot, something that would earlier take months and crores of rupees to do. And that's, while it is beneficial, it is also a threat to a large number of media companies, because content generation is your primary kind of business. So how do you, both as the CEO of HT as well as somebody who's worked across brands and companies for so many years, look at this evolution of AI generated content?
There are 3 or 4 very kind of related but different angles to it. And this conversation is only going to become more complex before it simplifies. What do I mean by that? I think there is one aspect which is of assisted versus generated, right? You see it happening in newsrooms today globally, where more and more and more AI-based systems and processes are getting embedded into the I would call it the news creation process. Now, what do I mean by that? A lot of it is to do with things like fact checking or finding references from historical data. So more of like assistive AI, so where it is an agent that is working alongside you rather than instead of you. So there is that whole space of assistive. There is a whole space where it is taking off from the point of view of content creation, like converting a story into a medium-based, video creations, etc. Some of those are to do with assistive, like where does it go from AI researched to AI assisted to AI amplified to AI generated, right? And I think it'll be a continuum. It's not either or, right? And you will end up with content systems where sometimes it'll be seen as negative, but sometimes it'll be where it's a very overt. The creator knows it and the consumer knows it. They both know it, that this content is AI generated. For example, and I'll just give you an example from elements that have happened in the recent past, is if somebody was trying to bring to life, let's say, events from what was happening across the border, right? And I'm a news channel. I don't have any video clips. What do? There's a 1-2 second clip that keeps going round and round and round and round and round. Instead of that, if I said that I'm going to create the whole thing in a Japanese like manga comic style, right? And I'm going to make the narrative because I know the story, I don't have the visuals. And that is what I use to convey the story, right? Convey the news, convey the information, where it is very clear to everybody that the style of storytelling is now assisted and generated, not the story itself. I think it will lead into very, very interesting spaces. I think the most concerning to many brands and some of the creators would be, hey, what happens when agentic bots on the side of users start interacting with this content, right?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's already
and now me, Samsung, as the consumer, I've got my own bot that is going to interact with all of these media and then curate the information for me and bring me the 2 videos that I want to see.
And now these bots are going into the supermarket to buy your products, right?
So what does that do to apps and the user experience on apps? Who knows? But I think it's going to get embedded. My only kind of point is people are not stupid, and it's not 0-1, and it will be more about, yes, I can see that there is AI in this interaction, but that is okay. I'm giving it the permission to interact, because it is, at the end of the day, it's about enhancing the experience. If the only answer is productivity, then from a user engagement perspective, it's a trivial question. It's not interesting.
Absolutely. Let me jump over to what brands are seeking, and you've spent significant time working with brands directly, and also in your agency role, working with and for brands across sectors. And the earlier era of marketing, where a brand would just brief you to get reach and engagement with audience, has really morphed into many other requirements. And I think with the advent of technology, with the advent of digital, one of the key aspects of brand requirement has also become safety and trust.
Yeah.
And in today's world, it has become very, very difficult to ensure that, right? So, your interactions with brands, your having been part of brand marketing teams, what does it tell you in terms of where we are headed? Is there a way to kind of curb this menace? And it is a multifaceted menace. On one side are bots, as you're talking about, and on digital, that's a very sort of recurring issue that keeps coming up. Many companies spend a lot of money on digital, but you're not sure how much of it is actual genuine traffic. On the other side, there is also safety issue in terms of who is exposed to your content, where you are placing that, and third is of course trust about the information that is being put out. So how does a brand go about kind of dealing with these issues and ensuring that they tick these check boxes correctly?
I'd say stay with print. It's pretty trustworthy a medium.
Brand, yeah, I mean, of course,
brand, right?
What you mean is a trustworthy brand.
As you said, there are 3 or 4 very, very different and distinct facets to this trust conversation, right? One facet is about, hey, bring my message out in an environment where I want my brand to be seen, right? It's kind of at the other end of the spectrum from really high-end premium super luxury brands that want to be seen in certain very glossy magazines and on the red carpet because that is the environment where they want their brands to be seen. And then at the other end you have brands that are really playing powerfully in the digital space saying ensure that I'm not next to content which is either distasteful or harmful to my brand's communication, right? I think this is a conversation and a problem that happens a lot more in mediums in places where it is based on UGC, right? User generated content. And that is a problem that brands always have, and those are conversations that have always happened and continue to happen with any digital medium which is into gathering content at scale instead of creating their own content. And and then packaging and bundling that for brands, and you'll always find third-party measurement systems and gates that then start playing a role on behalf of brands to ensure that there is an element of discipline around this. I think there's another part of it which is also about trust, which is about are you really delivering for me what you promise you deliver, right? Yes. There is the whole bot conversation. Elements of that would play out sometimes in print, which was, hey, is the circulation really what you claim it is? So I think it has its own different formats. I mean, it plays out in television, that is anybody measurement, and so it's all from verification of the supply side. Are you supplying to me what you are charging me for?
Yes.
And then it's on the ROI side, right? That I don't care about all these intermediate metrics. Are you really delivering to my top line what you promised you would? And that's why you find that sometimes performance marketers who have the access and visibility to data on their own side and can really measure short-term impact of advertising, they really don't care about these intermediate metrics. They say, I don't care about viewability, verification, all of this stuff because I know finally are you delivering or not. So I'm bypassing these intermediate metrics. So I think that's an element of trust which plays out there. By the way, I have not come across a single marketer who does not believe that they are a performance marketer. It's a very interesting one, and I remember back in the day when I used to be at Procter & Gamble, and one day I was having a conversation with the global CMO. He's still the global CMO, Mark Pritchard, and those days I was also running models for P&G in Asia. And he turned to me and said, Sam, we are a performance marketer. I said, what do you mean? No, the industry thinks we are a brand marketer. He says, no, like every dollar that we invest is based off performance metrics. Yep. It just so happens that in their case at that point in time, it was mixed models and not real-time mixed attribution or last-click attribution, but it's a performance business. You talk to real estate today, right? You put out an ad and they then look at how many calls came in using the number that was in the ad. So the concept of that there is a brand marketer is, I think it's a oversimplification of how brand marketers think. So I think there is that part of it. And the last part of this whole conversation is, I think, around holistic solutions. Brands want to tell a story which touches multiple points because they realize consumers are across primes. How can they have partners, and agencies love it. When they speak to us, they love the fact that we are across multiple media, right? TV, not TV, digital, print, but also radio.
Yeah.
And they say, look, you guys are uniquely placed, come back to us with holistic propositions that touch across. It helps us, it simplifies things.
Yeah.
So that's
I think,
that's
yeah,
how I
of
see
course.
it.
I mean, I'm also going to come over to crossovers in media, but before that, let me go back to your point on performance marketing. It is very interesting what you mentioned. I recall two conversations in the recent past. One with the CMO of HDFC Bank, because BFSI as a sector really started spending heavily on digital. Most of it was so-called performance marketing, and this distinction between spending on brand building and spending on performance is kind of fuzzy. Everybody follows their own definitions in some way. His view was that when I even sponsor IPL, for me it is performance. It has to move the needle for me in some manner, visible, quantifiable needle, not just on brand affinity going up. HDFC is a very well-known brand. We already have affinity in the market vis-a-vis our competitors. I need to see the needle moving. Cut to a recent conversation, in fact, at our technology conference 2 weeks back, the CEO of HUL, then CEO of HUL, Rohit Java, made a comment that for their company, 50% of the ad spend is now going on digital, which I presume a large majority is performance because that's how they're spending. Do you think we are falling into the trap of over-investing in performance marketing? Because by definition, a lot of it, for a lot of companies, is very short-term oriented.
See, for a lot of companies, especially D2C businesses, we got to realize that what we call marketing is actually a sales channel for them, right? And they see it as a cost of sales, right? It's another channel. I spend money on digital. You will find in those companies, digital investments and digital spending is not a line item under marketing. It's what drives revenue. The CEO will personally be looking at those numbers twice a day, right? And I think for many of those models, what they get out of it from a medium term, longer term brand equity building is almost an additional extra, because mentally they are thinking of it as a cost of sales, right? You find conversations with many of the D2C sellers. They say, what's the budget? They say the budget is infinite as long as the ROI is there.
Absolutely.
Why? Because it's a sales channel, right? So I think that's one part of it. The other part of it is for many of the traditional branding companies. Unilever is a wonderful example, as is P&G. Their mixed models have pretty much figured out on what's the short-term impact and what's the longer-term impact.
Right.
So while they will measure short-term, they also know the value of long-term. By the way, for a lot of companies, this is also long-term is the way that they hedge against private label, right? Because they're all fighting private label in different shapes or forms, right? And they don't want to be disintermediated out of the market for example, by the retailer, right? And longer term brand building is important for them.
Absolutely. Let me come to your side of the business. You've taken over the company during a time when it's going through a transformation, and media companies are still kind of evolving their models on their revenues. And just before we came in, we were discussing the revenue charts of large media companies in India. How do you look at the next few years panning out for a company like yours? There's advertising revenue, there's subscription revenue, and then many of the companies are now getting into e-com revenue, so to say, right? So what is the path a company, the space that you're in, is looking to take to kind of have the right mix, which is not dependent upon one model, but also provides fuel for growth for the future?
Look, I think first of all, yes, it's been about 4 months since I joined in. I got to bless, I count my blessings in terms of the wonderful team that I inherited. A great bunch of gals and guys to work alongside and along with. Strong support from the board and from the promoters. Look, there are 2 or 3 challenges and crossroads that every business looks at, and I mean in the media space, right? The big one, of course, is how do you grow print? What do you need to do to ensure that underserved segments, and those underserved segments may be at the bottom of the pyramid, the underserved segment may be a younger target audience in metros, right? They're all underserved segments. How do you ensure that you are doing what you do to work for underserved segments? With most businesses where there is a print component and there's a digital component, how do you from the internal side start working towards a more integrated view? It could be an integrated newsroom, it could be an integrated direct to, like a DTC model, or the GTM model, in terms of go-to-market and sales systems. So that's another part of it. Digital side, I think there are two big questions that most businesses are asking, and this is wider than media. First one is the right balance between transactions, subs, and advertising. Right? And the other one is what's the role of direct through web versus through app, right? And on top of that, you layer out by what's happening with intermediate models like search driving traffic as AI becomes more and more prominent. What will be the, I wouldn't even call it equilibrium, but what will be some of the emerging and sustainable models for driving a win-win between AI systems and call it content creators? Right. I'm largely using the term content creators beyond news and media, and these are going to be emerging. So in this highly fluid marketplace, not to even talk about the general AI related issues that land up with any enterprise in terms of enhancing effectiveness versus controlling costs and improving productivity, which is for almost any sector. How do you ensure that the bets that you are taking are smart, are nimble, you're not getting locked down too fast and too hard, yet where you see green shoots, you're able to fund, bringing in some of those startup kind of principles of management into large companies that have been there for a long period of time, into systems where efficiency and zero defect. At the end of the day with the newspaper, if you make a mistake in your news and then it's printed and it is out there, it's gone, right? So you have to eliminate error towards a model of quick iteration, fast-paced change, test, learn, A/B testing, all of that stuff. How do you get those two cultures working together? And there's no right or wrong. It's just every system has its own equilibrium there.
Before I get to my last question, one quick one. In the afternoon we had a session on what's happening in the news space and the impact Google is having. Google, especially AI, is having on the sort of earning models of news companies. What's your view on that? What do companies like yours do to kind of keep the growth of digital intact while companies like Google sort of through their AI systems mine so much data, and through Gemini and so many other bots provide the same information and start competing?
Yeah, look, it'll play out at 3 or 4 levels. One, active conversations that companies like ours need to continue to have with not just with Google but all the key players in the AI space. Yeah? You have to keep talking. I think that's one point. The other one is how do you
and also get them to share more revenue.
I think that's a byproduct. First, just have conversations. Where are they headed? What's the model that they are looking at? Because guess what? While we are seeing it from one side of the coin, the other side of the coin that they are looking at it is what will be our sources of information. They are now looking at moving beyond just using data to train LLMs into how do I actively curate, become a gateway, land up creating and participating in an ecosystem that is a sustained win-win. Otherwise, very quickly you will find that the creators of content start dwindling away, and then the only data that a model is training on is data that's been created by other models, and that just results in noise in the system. So that's a conversation that's that's going on. The second challenge that a lot of players are and almost everybody is dealing with is how do you start owning more of the relationship with your readers, right? Like whether it's in print or in digital, certainly it's there in print and digital, and lower the dependence on a gatekeeper, right? So that's a conversation that happens. Linked to that is how do you drive repeat, so frequency, recency, more number of times when people come back. I think these are, the pendulum is moving very quickly in terms of, hey, traffic is great, but what's the engagement, right? That's a conversation. And then the monetization levers we spoke about. How do you get the right balance of those three? Yeah, that's the way I look at it.
Fantastic. I see time's up. One last question. So much gets spoken about cultures of organizations. There are so many cliched things about culture versus strategy. And you work across sectors, corporations, geographies. What kind of culture do you think is best suited for companies that have been around for decades, like HT Media has
Yeah.
been, and also in a space which has, to put it mildly, been a tough space,
Yeah.
last few years especially. So from a cultural standpoint, what are you looking to do, next few years, which gives wings to the sort of growth engines of the company?
Look, I look at 2 or 3 things when I look at culture. The first thing I look at is team and people in a team who have an extremely high sense of curiosity, right? And usually people and companies that are curious are also people and companies that are very humble. Because it's only when you're humble you have an innate belief that there can be good things outside that I need to look at. Hubris sets in very quickly when systems start believing that all goodness resides within, right? So I think that's one point. And by the way, like large companies have done it really well. Companies like Unilever, P&G have always had an ingrained model of speaking to consumers. She is the boss. That is just another manifestation of people outside know better than people within. In today's tech world, it's called crowdsourcing. There's nothing but the same thing. You've got to look out. The other part of it is, I think, the link to that is, okay, so you're curious, you've learned, but then what are you doing about the learnings? So how do you have a very high focus on test and learn, right? So that's the second part. Third part is having the ability to figure out your testing and learning, but which ones are you scaling? You can't scale everything, but you also can't keep just testing and learning. And the last one is having a very healthy balance of a team that works cohesively, yet where people can challenge each other. Because if you land up in just one end of that, either you have a system which is completely consensus driven, everybody is very happy, but there's no change, or you land up in a system where there is dysfunctional anarchy and fights breaking up all the time, which is also not productive. So how do you have that right balance of people like pulling in the same direction, yet having the ability to challenge each other, question each other? You may land up in hot conversations, but when the meeting is over, everybody is going out and having a chai together. So I think those are the 3 or 4 things that I personally look at. I find that a lot, luckily in my organization, so I'm blessed in that sense as well.
Yeah, and also team culture is about, people enjoying each other's winning.
Yeah.
Right? Not
True.
just their own.
Absolutely.
That's a very important thing. It's a very cliched thing again, but I think it is so true. Thank you, Sam, for being here, doing this early into your journey, but I'm sure under you, HT will kind of find wings for its growth and do well. Thank you for taking time out. I'm sure you all found this session insightful. We have the awards in some time, so whoever wants can stay back for the awards. Thank you, Sam.
Thanks, Naval. Thank you for the opportunity.